controller based exception handling and global exception handling. Controller based exception handling, and the second one is global exception handling. Controller based exception handling, and second one is global exception handling. To handle the exceptions, to handle particular exception, we will use exception handler method. Exception handler annotation we will use to map an exception to a method. To handle the exceptions globally, we will use REST controller advice. To handle exceptions globally, we will use @REST controller advice annotation. To handle exceptions globally, we will use @REST controller advice annotation. Got my point? We understand how to handle user-defined exceptions also. We understood how to handle user-defined exceptions also. We understood how to handle user-defined exceptions also in REST API. That's perfect. Now, guys, and I want to teach you one thing, how to communicate with the database in our REST API. So some people are asking, sir, we want to perform the operations with the database by using REST API. Working with databases, working with database logic in REST API. Got it. Now guys, I think already you people learnt about Oracle database and the MySQL database. Am I right? Am I right? Did you guys use Oracle and the MySQL databases? Yes. Generally, we will use Oracle and the MySQL databases as part of our projects development. Generally, we will use Oracle and MySQL databases as part of our project development. Generally, we will use Oracle and MySQL databases as part of our project development. We need to download and install MySQL and Oracle data. In order to use Oracle and MySQL databases, we have to download and install database software. In order to use Oracle and MySQL databases, we have to download and install database software. These Oracle and MySQL databases are permanent databases. These Oracle and MySQL databases are permanent databases. These Oracle and MySQL databases are permanent databases. If we store the data in the Oracle or MySQL, that data will be available permanently for long time. If we store data in Oracle or MySQL, then data will be stored for long time. Data will be stored permanently. Generally, we will use Oracle and MySQL databases as part of our project development. In order to use Oracle and MySQL database, we have to download and install database software. These Oracle and MySQL databases are permanent databases. If we store the data in Oracle or MySQL, then data will be stored permanently. If we want to use the data permanently, then you can go for these databases. If we want to use the database temporarily, I don't want to install any database, I don't want to set up any database in my system, I want to go for a database for a temporary purpose. In Spring Boot, we can use temporary database also. In Spring Boot, we can use temporary database also. Temporary database means when the application started, when we start the application, database will start. When we stop the application, database will be stopped. These temporary databases are used for practice purpose, not for real time. In Spring Boot, we can use temporary databases. We can use temporary databases. Temporary databases are used for practice purpose, for learning purpose. We no need to download and install temporary databases. We no need to download and install temporary databases. We no need to download and install temporary databases. Temporary databases, temporary databases are called as in-memory databases. For practice purpose, for practice or learning purpose, for practice or learning purpose, we can use temporary database, or we can say in-memory database. In-memory database. H2 is one of the example for in-memory database. H2 is one of the example. H2 is one of the example for in-memory database. H2 is one of the example for in-memory database. When we start the Spring Boot application, H2 database will start. When we stop the Spring Boot application, H2 database will be stopped. Okay? When we start, when we start, when we start Spring Boot application, then database will start. And when we stop the application, when we stop the application, then database will be stopped. So database is temporary. Data is also temporary, not permanent. Sir, why we need to go for temporary? Now, I want to develop an application by using Angular and Spring Boot. Do I need to spend the time for downloading and installing the database? Not required. I want ready-made database. My intention is not for a database. My intention is developing Spring Boot application with some persistent logic. Okay? Then I can go for temporary databases. Then I can go for temporary databases. In Spring Boot, we can use a temporary databases. We no need to download and install temporary databases. Temporary databases are nothing but in-memory databases. They will come along with your application. When you start the application, database will come. When you stop the application, database will come. Temporary databases are called as in-memory databases. For practice purpose, for learning purpose, we can use in-memory database. H2 is one of the example for in-memory database. When we start the Spring Boot application, then database will start, and when we stop the application, then database will be stopped. Okay, are you guys able to understand? Now tell me, are we going to use the H2 database in the real project? Can we develop a real project by using H2? What will happen? When you stop the application, database will go. All the data will be deleted. When to go for H2, guys? When to go for H2? Temporary purpose. I want the database for only half an hour, that's it. I want the database only for half an hour. Whenever my project starts, I want the database. When my project is stopped, I don't want the database. Suppose, for example, today I will store the data. I want this data after 10 years also. Then don't go for H2. Go for Oracle or MySQL or MongoDB, whatever you want. Whatever you want. I want the database only for half an hour. Today, I'm developing one simple Angular REST API. Angular application with Boot REST API. When I am running my application, I want the database. Once my application stopped, I don't want the data. That is dummy. Just for my practice purpose, I want the database. I don't want to download. I don't want to install anything. Then simply I can go for in-memory database. Spring Boot is having very good integration with the in-memory database. What is the example for in-memory? H2 is one of the example for in-memory database. H2 is the one of the example for in-memory database. Are you guys able to Now, in order to use H2 database in the Spring Boot application, we just need to add H2 dependency. To use H2 database in Spring Boot application, we have to add H2 dependency in pom.xml file. To use H2 database in Spring Boot application, we have to add H2 dependency in the pom.xml. Okay, now let me take one requirement and develop the application. Develop an application, develop a REST API to store the product and retrieve the product using H2 data requirement. Develop Spring Boot REST API. Develop Spring Boot REST API, which can store and retrieve products data using H2 database. That's it. This is my requirement. I want to database. Tomorrow, if you want other database, just you need to change the properties. That's it. In place of H2, you can go for Oracle. You can go for MySQL also. Right. Develop Spring Boot REST API, which can store and retrieve products data using H2 database. Okay. Now, my IDE got opened, guys. Observe carefully first what I am doing. File, new, Spring Starter project. File, new, Spring Starter project I am developing. Here, I am taking 38th application. Spring Boot REST H2 app. Spring Boot REST H2 DB app. Okay. Now, guys, all of you can see my screen. All of you can see my screen now. Is it visible now? Yeah, it's visible. I'm creating one Spring Boot application, guys. Spring Boot REST H2DB application. Maven project, jar packaging, language Java, version 8. Okay? Now observe carefully what are the dependencies I'm selecting. Spring Web dependency. And I want H2 database. Spring Web dependency I have selected. H2 database I have selected. And data JPA I have selected. Lombok I have selected. Okay. In order to communicate with the database, I will use data JPA. And H2 is my actual embedded database. Lombok for center scatters. And web dependency to develop a REST control. If you want to go for Oracle, then you can go for Oracle driver. If you want to go for MySQL, then you can go for MySQL connector. Okay, fine. Now H2 database, DevTools, Lombok, data JPA, web. That's it. Click on next. Click on finish. Yeah, my project is getting created. Project is getting created. Project is getting created. Okay, project got created. Now go to pom.xml file. Now go to pom.xml file and see the dependencies that we have created. Boot starter data JPA, boot starter web, boot to DevTools, H2 database, and project Lombok. These all are the dependencies that I have selected. Data JPA, Web Starter, DevTools, H2 database, Lombok. Perfect. Now, the very next thing that we need to do is configure data source properties. Spring dot data source dot with which database you want to connect. Spring dot data source dot URL. Spring dot data source dot URL. Spring dot data source dot username. Spring dot data source dot username. Spring dot data source dot password. URL username password. Driver class. Spring dot data source dot driver class. And server dot port is equal to 9090. We are going to configure server port number. That port number we are giving as 9090. That's it. Now URL. So generally you will configure Oracle URL, MySQL URL. Here we need to go for H2 URL. We need to go for H2 URL. Can anyone tell me what is H2 URL? What is H2 URL? H2. H2 is a in-memory database. H2 is a in-memory database. We need to configure H2 URL. Like generally when you go for Oracle database, you will configure Oracle URL. Similarly, we need to configure H2 URL. That is JDBC colon H2 colon mem colon testdb. JDBC colon H2 colon mem colon testdb. Username, whatever you want, you can keep. Password also you can keep whatever you want. Driver class org.h2.driver. That's it. These are called as data source properties. These are called as data source properties. Now, just run the application, guys. Don't do anything. Let's see. Are we able to access the database? Close unrelated projects. Close unrelated projects. Now, go here. Run as boot app. Go here, run as boot app. I just want to see my database is starting or not. My embedded database is getting started or not. I just want to verify. Okay, application started. Can you see here? H2 console available. Get the slash H2 hyphen console. Go to browser, localhost colon 9090 slash H2 hyphen console. This is the URL to access the H2 database. Wow, H2 database. And password I have given as SA. Test connection, test successful. For some people, this URL may not come correctly, guys. Then you need to take the URL which we configured in the pom.xml, the application properties. You need to take this application properties URL, whatever you configure here, that URL you need to give. Then username SA, password also SA, test connection, my connection is successful, then click on connect. Click on connect. Wow. Am I able to connect to the database? Am I able to connect to the database? Create a table, add a row, create the table, delete the table, drop the table. All the things are available. All the things are available. Are you guys clear with this one? Are you guys clear with this one? Are you guys clear with this one? Come on. Good. Database is ready. Now, I will stop my application. I will stop my application. When I stop my application, is my database is available? Is my database available? Can I access localhost colon 9090 slash H2 hyphen console? Can I access this? Can I access this when my application is not running? So why it is not accessible now? Because this is not a permanent database. It is a temporary database. If my application is running, then only my database will run. If my application stops, database will stop. This is called embedded database. Are you able to follow me how to configure embedded database? What we have done, I have just added one dependency called H2. Then I configured H2 data source properties. URL, JDBC colon, data also we lost. When the database is stopped, we will lose the data also. It is temporary only. Data source URL, JDBC colon H2 colon mem colon testd. Data source username SA, password SA. Driver class org.h2.driver. Port number 9090. If I run my application, run as boot app. I'm running my application. When I run my application, database will start again. That is called in-memory database. In-memory database. Now access it. Again the database is coming. SA, connect. Yes, I'm able to connect to my database. I'm able to connect to my database. Are you guys comfortable with this? How to work with in-memory database now? Is it difficult to configure in-memory database for the boot application? What are the steps I have taken? Create a Spring Boot application with below dependencies. I have created like this. Create Spring Boot app with below dependencies. What are the dependencies that we have taken? Web starter, data JPA starter, web starter, data JPA starter, then H2, Lombok, project Lombok, dev tools. Dev tools. These are the dependencies I have taken. Boot web starter, data JPA starter, H2, Lombok, dev tools. Once it is done, configure data source properties in application.properties file. Configure server port and data source properties in application.properties file. Okay, so these are my data source properties and application.properties file. This is my application.properties file. This is my application.properties file. Configure server port and data source properties in application.properties file. Perfect. For testing purpose, just start the application and access the below URL. Note, for H2 DB testing, run the application and access below URL. What is that URL? http://localhost:/h2-console. http://localhost:/9090/h2-console. It will display a window like this. There you can enter these details. We can see H2 console like this, and we can log in into H2 database. We can see H2 console like this, and we can log in into that console using the details that we configure. H2 console. It will display like this. Create the boot application with these dependencies. Web starter, data JPA, H2, Lombok, dev tools. Configure the port number and data source properties. Guys, observe the data source properties. JDBC colon H2 colon mem colon testdb. Data source username SA. Data source password SA. Driver class name org.h2.driver. Server port number 9090. For H2 database testing, run the application and access below URL. H2-console is the URL pattern, guys. It will give you this window, this page. There you can enter your details and you can give the URL, username, password. Whatever you configure in the properties file, same details you have to give here. You can test that connection. If the connection is successful, then click on connect. Then you can log in into the database. Am I doing any installation here? Am I doing any DB installation? Or I'm using in-memory database? I'm not using any installation. I'm using in-memory database. What is the meaning of in-memory? It's temporary. When my application is running, database will run. When my application got stopped, my database will be stopped. When my application is running, database will run. When my application got stopped, then database will be stopped. Okay. H2 console is predefined URL. Whenever you add the H2 database, H2 console is the predefined URL which will give you H2 database access. That's predefined. Okay, then now to perform the operations, guys, let me develop one simple product class which is entity database mapping. New class. Let me take it as a product. In dot model or in dot entity कुछ भी product I'm taking. Got it. I'm taking one class with a name called product. Inside this product class, I will take some variables to represent the data. I will take few variables to represent the data. Let's stop this. Yeah, Redis cache. I will come to Redis cache, Sanjay. Please hold on, man. I'm not talking about Redis cache now. Okay, Redis cache we'll discuss in microservices. Private integer product ID, private string product name, private double price. Private double price. I have taken product ID, product name, product price. I want setters, getters for these variables. Lombok. I'm using @data. I'm using @data. This is my Lombok annotation, guys. I'm using @data. This is my Lombok annotation. Along with this, I need to represent this class as an entity class. So I'm using @entity annotation. I want to generate the primary key value for this product ID. I don't want to set this. Okay. Let me represent this as a ID. So this is a, let's leave it. ID. I have given ID. @data will generate the setters, getters for these variables. @entity, this will become an entity class. Okay, fine. That's perfect. Now, let me create one repository to perform the operations. New interface. Let me go for product repository in.ashokit.repo. Product repository. How to make this as a data JPA repository? Extends from JPA repository. Product is the entity. Product is the entity and data type is the integer. What is the primary key? Primary key type is a integer. That's it. Database logic got completed. I no need to write anything to perform the CRUD operations with the database because data JPA will take care of it. Public interface product repository which is extending from JPA repository. Kam khatam. So what I have created, guys? After creating the project, adding the details, what I have done now? I created one product class. That's it. Create entity class like below. Create entity class like below. Third step. Create entity class like below. Create entity class like below. Very good. Entity class like below. This is mapping with the database table. The Java class which is mapping with the database table is called as entity class. Then create repository by extending from JPA repository. Create repository interface by extending JPA repository. Create the repository interface by extending JPA repository. Okay, someone is asking, can we use two databases? Yes, I will cover that concept also. It is part of our syllabus. In the microservices, I will tell you how to communicate with multiple databases using Spring Boot. Okay, fine. Now here I have taken one repository which is extending from JPA repository. That's it. Is there any confusion in creating entity class, in creating repository interface? I have mentioned in the notes also. First step is create the project. Second step is add the properties. Third step, check the H2 console is working or not. Okay. Then third step, creating the entity class to represent table structure. Fourth step, creating the repository interface. Guys, I am not writing service here because no business logic. Directly I will write a REST controller. Okay? New class product REST controller. Product REST controller. This one I am keeping inside REST package. Click on finish. Okay. Go to product REST controller. Let's make it as a REST controller by using REST controller annotation. Done. Next that, let's inject repository interface. Product repository repo. I'm injecting that. For injection, we are using auto wiring. Okay. So repository is injected into REST controller. Okay. Okay. Good. Some people are not clear about data JPA here. Don't worry guys, I will explain all these things for you. You no need to worry. I will find some time over the weekend and I will tell you data JPA. I need to conduct a workshop, so due to my hectic schedule, I was not able to plan the sessions. I'm sorry. Definitely I will take that data JPA classes. Now, REST controller class I have taken. Inside that I am injecting product repository. Product repository. Now, let's write one method. Public response entity of string add product. So I'm going to take product as a parameter. Product as a parameter. Which one? This is going to come as request body. Product data I'm going to take as a request body. A post request. Let's bind this method to post request. Post mapping slash product. What is the purpose of this product? Add product method. It is going to call repo.save. I'm simply passing product object as a parameter to repository. Repository is going to insert that record into the database. It is going to insert that record into the database. Okay. Then I'm going to simply return this. Return new response entity of product saved, comma, HTTP status dot OK. HTTP status dot created. Repository dot save. That's it. Save the product. Return new response entity of product saved, HTTP status dot created. This is the value, and let's consume this data in the JSON format. Consumes this data in the JSON format. I want the product data to come in the JSON value. Sorry guys. Now, is there any confusion? In this method? No confusion, no? It's very simple and straightforward. I have taken one REST controller. In that REST controller, I'm injecting product repository with auto wiring. Then I'm writing one method. That method is taking product data in the request body in JSON format. Okay. Whenever we send a post request to this method will save that record in the table by using this repository. No need to write any code. Data JPA will take care. Once that record got saved into database, I'm returning a success message with the status as 201, record created. Alright, now I want to get all the records which are saved. I want to get all the records which are saved. Public list of public response entity of list of products. No need to take any input. Simply we are going to get all the products from the table and we are going to send to the client in the JSON format. Alright, now how to get all the records from the table? Repo.find all. It will give all the records available in the database in the form of one collection. It will give all the records available in the table in the form of one collection. So simply return new response entity of products, comma, http status.ok. Let's bind this method to a get request. For that I'm taking get mapping slash products. It is used to give all the products which are available in the table. Now get mapping method, this can produce the data in the JSON format. Produces is equal to application slash JSON. First method is going to consume the JSON data. Second method is going to produce the JSON data. First method is binded to post request. Second method is binded to get request. Let's observe these two methods, guys. Let's observe these two methods once. Okay. If you have any doubt, you can let me know. If you have any doubt, you can let me know. Let's look at this method. Already we developed several methods like this. There is nothing new. There is nothing new. It's already old topic only. Consumes, produces, get request, post request. Hello? Yeah, right, guys. You understand what I am doing in these methods now? One method is used for simply storing the data. One method is used to retrieve the data. With which database? H2 database. How? My REST controller communicating with the database. My REST controller not communicating with the database directly. My REST controller communicating with the repository. Data JPA repository. Repository will communicate with the database. Are you getting my point? Are you getting my point? Can we run this application and check it now? Refresh. Run this project. Run as boot app. Run as boot app. Okay. Let's go to Postman. Let's go to Postman. In order to test this application, we need to go for Postman because there is a post request. Can I send the post request from browser? Can we send post request from the browser? Guys, please respond. Can we send post request from the browser or we cannot send post request from the browser? We cannot. So I'm going for Postman here. I'm going for Postman here, which is used to send post request. Okay. Yes, right. Okay, now go to H2 console and check it. Is it really opening or not? Connect. Password is there, na? SA, connect. Can you see product table is created? Is there any data in the product table? Automatically the table is created. Who is creating that? Spring Boot is telling to H2. H2 is creating that. So table also created automatically. This is auto configurations, the beauty. I am not installing the database. I am not downloading any database. I am not creating the table. Everything is taken care by Spring Boot. So now, can you understand intelligence of the Spring Boot? Power of the Spring Boot. If you go for JDBC classes, your faculty will take 3 to 4 classes to tell you how to install the database, how to set up the database, how to connect to database. How much time it is taking here? How much time it is taking here? Setting up the database. Am I really setting up the database? Our database is coming automatically. Guys, that is what technology is emerging like anything. Technology is emerging like anything. You need to think in such a way. Things are automated. Things are automated. We need to think in such a way. Manual work, people are not encouraging. Things should be automated. You got my point now? Things should be automated. You just focus on your logic. Whatever the infrastructure is required for you, Spring Boot will provide. That's why Spring Boot became this much popular in the market. This is a live example for you. I am not downloading any database. I am not installing any database. I am not creating the table. But everything is ready. I have the database to store the data. I have the database to retrieve the data. Dynamically, everything is coming to my application. Now, let's try. Go to Postman. Localhost colon 9090/product. Headers content type is JSON data I am sending. Body. Let's go for JSON. PID, I will give it as 101. And product name, I will give it as keyboard. Price is a double value. I will give something like 2500. Price I will give as 2500 00. This is my JSON data that I am giving. Concentrate. Check the keys and variable names are matching or not. PID, Pname and price. I'm also giving PID, Pname and price. Key value. Click on send. Oh, product saved. 201 created. Go to database. Run this. Can you see one record inserted? Can you see that record inserted in the table? Guys, is my record inserted in the table or not? Which database? Temporary database. If I stop my application, will I have this data? If I stop my application, will I have this data? I will not. Okay. Let me insert one more record. 102. Keyboard is already there. Let's go for mouse. Mouse is 500 rupees or 1500 rupees. Wireless mouse. Good. Click on send. Now I got it. Product saved. Go to the database. Run this query. Wow. Second record also inserted into the table. Second record also inserted into the table. Are you able to see this? Now, I can access get request from the browser directly. Localhost colon 9090/products. Post I can't access, but get I can access here. Can you guys see product records are coming from the table in the form of JSON? My REST API is giving the JSON data or not? Am I able to access a second method /products, which is giving me data in the form of JSON? Okay, very good. Let's stop our application now. washing powder Nirma, everything is clean. Nothing will be available in the database. Do we have the records in the database now? I have stored keyboard and mouse records. Washing powder Nirma, everything is clean. No database, no records. We lost everything. It's became Gajini. Our application is in Gajini state now. We lost our data. Okay, see this. See that. Right click, run as boot app. Right click, run as boot app. You know Nirma powder, na? Both famous hai, long back. I don't know people are now using it or not. Both ads bhi aate rehte hai uska. Now, my application got started. Go to database. Let's disconnect and connect again. Connect. Go to the table. Click on the table name. Click on run. Empty. No rows. Why no rows are available? I have inserted 2 records. Where are my records now? Do I have my data or I don't have my data? Do I have my data or I don't have my data? I don't have my data. Why? Why my data is not available? I want my data now. I want my data. If I roll down on the floor and cry for 10 minutes, will I get my data back? If I roll down on the floor and cry for 10 minutes, I want my data. Will I get my data or I will not get my data? I have inserted 2 records. They are very important now. I want my data. No way. No way. I lost because my application got restarted. My application got restarted. If your application got restarted, then your database also will restart. If you want to store your data permanently, go for Oracle or MySQL. Your data will be permanent. Even if you stop your application, database will be available. If you go for Oracle database or MySQL database, if you stop your application also, database will be available. But if you go for a H2, when you restart your application, your database will restart, everything chale gaya. Nothing will be there. Everything will be deleted. Again, freshly database will start. I lost my data. People are asking, then what is the use of H2? ये गजनी है सर, इसका क्या फायदा है हमको? इससे क्या फायदा है? What is the use? The use is, if you want to learn any concept with database logic, you no need to spend time to set up the database. I want to develop one application by using Spring Boot with React integration code operations. Generally, it will take 1 hour, 2 hours to set up the database. But here, we can set up the database on the fly. Within 2 minutes, we can set up the database. Any POC, if you want to develop, proof of concept, temporary learning. I want to learn some technology with database communication implementation. Then you can go for POC development, proof of concept. When you want to develop a POC in your laptop, you don't need to spend the time to set up the database. Just go for H2, embedded, in memory. When you start the application, database will start. When you stop the application, database will be stopped. You no need to waste your time in setting up the databases. You can just use it for your requirement temporarily. Temporarily, you can use this database. Okay. Now, after creating this repository, I have created REST controller. Guys, I have given complete code also. Create REST controller to handle request and response. Create REST controller to handle the request and response. Okay. Perfect. Very good. Beautiful. Somebody asked a question, can I change the get to post, post to get? You can change. But HTTP is our own protocol. Huh? Did we develop HTTP protocol or we are using HTTP protocol? You can change it, man, but not recommended. That is universal. Now, last step, run the application and test it using Postman. That is the last step. Okay, in the Postman I am giving some data, body ka data kya hai bhai? This is the body data. I am giving you for sample. Now, by following this document, can you build this application, guys? Simply, you need any extra thing to develop this application? You just follow the document. Create the application, select these dependencies, open the properties file, configure these properties. After configuring the properties, just you run the project and see if you hit this URL, are you getting the screen like this? Test connection, connect to database and see, are you able to connect to H2 database or not? Fine. Now, create the entity class for table mapping, then create the repository interface. The people who don't know data JPA, don't worry. You can do these two steps. Only third step and fourth step is difficult for you. You just follow this diagram. If you don't know data JPA also, no problem. I'm not doing any logic here. I'm just creating one entity class and I'm creating one repository interface. Third step and fourth step, I have given the code also. You just follow that, that's it. Fifth step, REST controller, we already discussed in the class. Get request method, post request method. Run the application and test it using Postman. I think we are good in understanding how to communicate with the database using REST API and how to use H2 database. Tomorrow, sir, I want to communicate with the MySQL database. Then can you tell me what are the changes I need to do to communicate with MySQL database? Same application, if you want to communicate with the MySQL database, note, if we want to, people are asking, sir, please explain MySQL. Common sense you need to have. If we want to communicate with MySQL DB in above application, change, add MySQL connector dependency in the pom.xml. First step, add MySQL connector dependency in pom.xml. Second step, change data source properties in application.properties file. That's it. MySQL driver class, MySQL URL, MySQL username, MySQL password, add the MySQL driver dependency. MySQL connector driver dependency in the pom.xml. These are the two things you need to do. You don't need to change anything in the code. You just need to add the MySQL connector driver dependency in the pom.xml. That is the first step. Second step, we are connecting to H2. So I have written H2 properties here. Instead of H2 properties, these four property values you have to change. Instead of H2 URL, MySQL URL. Instead of SA, MySQL username, MySQL password, MySQL driver class. Then your application can connect with MySQL database also. Same thing, if I want to go with Oracle database, do I need to change all the code? Do I need to change my complete project if I want to communicate with Oracle database? No, मैं क्या करना है? Oracle driver dependency add करो, data source properties change करो. That's it. pom.xml file, application and properties file. These things you have to do, guys. You are not doing LKG here. You are learning Spring Boot, topmost technology in the market. have common sense. You should have that capability to understand and to practice. If I teach everything, it will take another 5 months. Spring Boot. If you want me to teach how to connect with MySQL, one example, how to connect with Oracle, one example, how to connect with SQL Server, how to connect with PostgreSQL, how to connect with MongoDB, how to connect with Cassandra, HBase, Hive, Pig. Spring Boot will take 1 year. Got it? I have explained one example. Then you have to practice it. You have to practice it. Whatever you understand today, Arey, Ashok explained H2. How can I connect with Oracle? That maturity you should get, man. You should think. You should write it. How to connect with MySQL? Why should I wait for Ashok to explain that concept? I will try on my own. That power, that responsibility you should take. Then only you will learn. If you dependent on me for everything, tomorrow you cannot survive in the IT as a programmer. आप खुद से करना पड़ेगा सब कुछ कंपनी में. इधर मैं करता हूँ बट कंपनी में मैं नहीं रहता हूँ ना. आपके पास आप खुद से करना पड़ेगा सब गूगल करके. यस ओके. Tomorrow I will not be there with you in the company. When you get the job, I will not be there with you in your company, in your project. You have to do the work on your own. So you have to get that maturity to write the code. Someone is asking, please show one example on MySQL also. आप क्या करेगा भाई? डिनर करके सो जाते हैं क्या? आप ट्राई करो पहले. This is not a rocket science. If I click a button, one rocket should go to the sky and it should see what is happening in there. We are not developing that rocket science application. A bachcha LKT standard REST API, how to store the data, how to retrieve the data. It is not a rocket science. Please change your mindset. Good. So all of you comfortable with H2 database now? All of you comfortable with H2 database now? Okay. Good guys. Thank you. With this I'm stopping for today. We'll continue tomorrow. Guys, tomorrow also I will take the session at 9:30 guys. Another 1 or 2 days I will take at 9:30. Then I will come to 9 o'clock. I have some small work there. So I will take the session at 9:30 tomorrow also. I have sent the message in the chat now. So same way. Tomorrow please connect at 9:30. You plan accordingly. Tomorrow also class I will start at 9:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Tomorrow is cloud deployment. Heroku deployment we will see in the tomorrow session. Once Heroku deployment completed, then we will go for client development. Once client development completed, then microservices. Okay? Bye-bye. Good night. See you tomorrow. Yeah, hi Vaibhav Sharma. Hi Vaibhav. Yeah, Vaibhav. Unmute your mic.
Hi sir.
Hello sir, tell me.
Actually I'm having three offers sir. One is Right Point, one is Prelo which is in Bangalore, and one is in New Gen sir. Which three sir join sir?
No. Can you repeat your offer letters, companies?
Sir, one is Prelo.
Prelo?
One is Right Point and one is New Gen.
I heard about New Gen sir. You can go for New Gen. Remaining two are new for me also. I didn't hear those names. You check in the Glassdoor once. किसके लिए अच्छा reviews है उसको जा सकते हो.
Sir, actually problem is na sir, New Gen are giving me means project on core Java and advanced Java, so there is no use.